Charles, we've got a very special guest who's going to be joining us today. Our standard lead-in music there. We're going to be joined today by the writer and producer of the new movie about Gosnell, America's deadliest serial killer. We're joined by Phelim McKellar. How are you, Phelim? Wait a minute, we've lost your audio. Sorry, can you hear us, Phelim?
Yes, I can hear you.
We've got you there. We've got you there. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us a bit about the film?
Well, it's a true crime drama about Kermit Gosnell, America's biggest serial killer that you've never actually heard of.
Right.
He was an abortion doctor in Philadelphia. He killed children. He killed his patients. And because of political, I suppose, cover-ups, political correctness, he was able to keep on killing. And then when the trial came around, the media refused to cover it. It became a national scandal, a lack of coverage.
Wow. Why is it that we haven't heard about this and the media refused to cover it?
Well, the media, and by their own admission, by the way, the media are, and many of the reporters at the time said we're pro-choice, we're liberal. We tend to shy away from stories that shine a negative light on abortion. And, they found something more interesting to cover at the time because they didn't want to cover something that was negative about abortion.
And the story of how you persisted and how you, against all these obstacles, actually have brought this movie out to the point where I think it's appearing not as widely in movie theaters as you might like, but it is in certain movie theaters, even here in New York, I think, New York City. What kind of determination and grit was required to get this film to this place?
Yeah, it wasn't easy. We obviously Hollywood didn't want to fund this, so we had to go crowdfunding. So we went on Kickstarter, and Kickstarter said, "Yeah, you can use Kickstarter, but you just can't mention murder, in the same phrase as abortion." And I'm going, "He's an abortion doctor. He's an abortion doctor. I mean, he's been convicted of murder." And that's a jury found him guilty of murder. They said that will offend our community standards, and I said I don't want to be part of that community. So we went to Indiegogo. We raised 2.3 million from 30,000 people, a world record.
Yeah.
And but by the way, no mainstream media coverage at all. Zero. They've never acknowledged it. Facebook have been blocking our ads for our movie. NPR refused to take our ads. I mean, it's just, the mainstream media always seem to find excuses not to talk about this film.
Well, we're delighted that you would agree to come on our show because we have maybe not millions of subscribers, but we have 68,000 plus very active and engaged subscribers. And I like to encourage every one of them to go out and see this film and tell your friends about it, drag them to see this film. I see that you are in various venues here.
Yes. Yeah. Are you New York City or New York State?
New York City.
New York City. So people in Staten Island, or people going to go over to the Kips Bay Theater and check it out. That's quite close to where we are right now.
Long Island too. There's also one in Times Square actually.
Really?
Go down.
Well, if AMC has picked it up, I would imagine the AMC Theater in Times Square might have it as well.
Yes, it has. Yeah, it's there somewhere. Where is it now? Yeah, it's definitely there.
People should check their local listings, of course, but you've done an impressive job of getting it into a lot of theaters. I've got a background in independent film production and raising money in the way that you've described and getting the type of distribution that you've got here. This is really exceptional. I think that maybe the average person viewing might not appreciate that, but getting a film distributed to major theaters like this without the backing of a studio, how did you achieve this kind of distribution?
Well, we had to raise some money. Actually, that's the problem. We had to raise our own money. We had to work with a very understanding distributor who understood what we wanted to do, understood there was a market out there, understood that people wanted to see this film.
Mm-hmm. And of course, you didn't enter into this venture with the intent of becoming rich. This is obviously a labor of love and something that's very important to you, because I'm certain that even though people will hear that you've raised $2.3 million, producing a movie like this, distributing and advertising frequently costs much, much more money than that.
No, if we wanted, if I honestly think I've been at this 4 to 5 years now, and if we'd worked in McDonald's, we'd have made more money per hour. I mean, that's how bad it is.
Yeah, no, I have little doubt.
I see, in preparing for this interview, I see that you are getting certain reviews. I saw one in the LA Times that wasn't exactly, rip-roaring positive, but it wasn't as negative as I imagined it might have been.
Well, I mean, all those papers, New York Times, Hollywood Reporter, Variety, they have a policy that they review every movie that it has a national release, and they've broken that policy in this case. The LA Times gave us a small review. I'm not sure that the LA Times person watched the film. The review, you could write that review
right
based on the trailer. There's nothing in that. If you read that review, there's nothing in that review that is not contained in the trailer. It's very suspicious.
Interesting.
Have you been able yet to get any sense of audience reaction?
Oh yeah, just go on Twitter. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Because my sense, I don't know if you went through this, I'll share a personal thing. I have 2 children, they're grown, and I used to be very casual about the idea of, abortion, that's not a problem, it's safe, legal, rare, etc. And then I went and, for my first child, went through that, amniocentesis thing, and you see this little spirit in something that's 10, 11 weeks old, and that just changed my life. Just to see that one thing. I could, I'm no medical expert, but I could see that it's not as simple as just saying, there's nothing there, move on. And then when you, in this country, I'm sure you've done a lot of this work, when you try to get and see just how rare abortions are, they're not all that rare. I mean,
No.
And I think what you're doing here is a wonderful thing to change the focus and change the discourse. And while it's taken you 5 years, I'm not so sure that if you tried to do this 5 years ago, you'd get the same reception. I think people are thinking more open-mindedly now. They're challenging the status quo. They're challenging political correctness. But have you had, what's the biggest theater that you've opened in?
Actually, it's the AMC in Times Square in New York. Funny, it's not on that list. I must make a note to change that. We've also been in Burbank in LA. Well, that's been our most successful theater so far. We're in 650 theaters. It's in a theater hopefully near you as you're watching this. If not, some people have been very generous, and to make a difference, they're buying tickets online even though they can't go, as a kind of donation to make this film a success, and to try and persuade theaters to keep it going.
And just from a filmmaking standpoint, I want to reiterate that although a feature film like Star Wars or Mission Impossible would be released in 3,000 to 4,000 theaters, for an independent film to get a 600 theater release is quite substantial. Some of the films that I worked on that were in the budget range you're talking about would struggle to get into 20 theaters. And these were entertainment films. What you've created is sort of a docudrama based on real life events. So it's not like this is an independent horror movie that's going to be like Blair Witch Project or something like that. This is quite an achievement. I think you must be quite proud of what you've done in bringing this to people's attention around the country in the way that you have. Will the film go to Netflix? Will it go to iTunes after the theatrical release?
Yes, it's going on Netflix.
Okay.
Which is amazing. And the more successful it is, the higher up on the algorithm it will be on Netflix. And that's what we're working on now, is to make sure that it's really, really successful. I mean, we're the number 5 movie for per screen averages this weekend, we think. Wow. We're hovering around the top 10 movies in the US this weekend. So if we can keep that going for the next few weeks and really get this going, then the film will get a good show on Netflix.
That's great. That's really amazing. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking here at boxofficemojo.com, which is a website that tracks the release of films. And again, for an independent feature, the way you are describing it, look at the number of theaters this is in compared to the number of theaters Venom is in. And I mean, Charles, I'm sure you can do this math more easily than me. If we want to strictly compare theaters, that's nothing compared to, this says the budget of Venom is 100 million. I'm sure that's a gross underestimate. It's probably closer to 200 million, and that doesn't include the undoubted hundreds of millions used to advertise this film. So for Gosnell, the trial of America's biggest serial killer, to reach number 12 and to have the weekend gross exceed 1 million, this is tremendous. I imagine this is historic performance for an independent feature like this.
Yeah, one that isn't backed by the big studio or doesn't have a big studio star. It's practically unheard of, but we need people to go out, turn out today, turn out tomorrow. This needs to keep going because Hollywood wants this to fail. They didn't want, the mainstream media didn't want to cover this at the time until they were shamed into it. They haven't covered, they haven't reviewed it. They want it to fail. We got to make sure it doesn't.
I totally agree. How much have you gotten into the statistics about abortions by ethnicity and income level? Have you gotten into that?
Yeah, funny, we don't get into that at all. This is a movie about this case, right? And we made that a deliberate decision that it's a crime drama, right? It's not a political drama. It's not a political movie. It's not, nothing, there's so many movies coming out now that preach at people.
Right.
There's so many movies now that come out that talk down to people, that try and make a political point and don't make a movie. And we were so determined not to go down that path. So if it wasn't said in the film, and if it's not relevant to the story, then it doesn't make it. And the statistics about the world abortion rates and the American abortion rates, it's not relevant to how this guy was convicted and tried and convicted. But believe me, there's plenty of information in there about abortion, but it all came out during the trial. One of the things that we really liked doing was the prosecution were struggling, so they decided to bring in a good abortion doctor, a proper abortion doctor, to show the difference between a proper abortion and Gosnell's illegal abortions. That really backfired on them because, the first thing the doctor was asked is, how many abortions have you done? And the abortion doctor said 40,000.
Wow.
Yeah. Now in the film, we changed that to 30,000 because we thought no one would believe 40,000. So we didn't want them thinking that's not true. So we changed it to 30,000, and then the piece in the film it's played by Janine Turner, who does a wonderful cameo. It's one of the most powerful parts of the film, in my opinion. And then they say to her, "What happens if a baby's born alive?" She says, "It isn't born alive." And eventually she admits babies are born alive, and they would give it comfort care. And you can see all these journalists going, "What's comfort care? Do you know what comfort care is?" "I don't know what comfort care is." And then she's forced to say what comfort care is. And she says, "We will put it aside, cover it in a blanket, keep it warm. Eventually it will pass." And it's like, wow. So Kermit Gosnell is on trial for capital murder for killing babies born alive by stabbing them, right? Horrific. But good abortionists can make a career and a fortune out of babies being born alive and letting them die of dehydration and starvation.
Wow. That's outrageous.
And that's in the film, and that's the thing that really gets a lot of people. And that's directly from the trial transcripts. That is verbatim. That is like 100%. That was said during the trial.
Wow. Wow. I think this is a film that could really change a lot of people's opinions about the practical application of abortion. I mean, we can all agree to it in principle, but if this is what's being done, that's quite a surprise, I would think, to most people.
Yes. Yeah, that's the shocking bit to most people. It's even a shocking thing to a lot of pro-life people.
Right.
Who don't like abortion but don't really know much about the details. But it's certainly a huge shock to a lot of people who are in favor of abortions. Like, we had a liberal friend we showed the film to, and he had to walk out of the room, started chain smoking, and said, "I have to rethink everything."
Yeah, well, that's a tour de force film.
Yeah. Well, we'll be sure to see that film. The title of the film, of course, is Gosnell, The Trial of America's Biggest Serial Killer. And this is a really troubling and fascinating story that film has brought to our attention. I hope that people will seek out a local theater in their area and go and watch the film. And then after it's what so far is an absolutely remarkable theatrical run, it'll be available on Netflix for people to view. So it should get some really widespread attention, I would think. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with us about it, Phelan?
No, I think the idea now is to get the box office numbers up. People are being very good, and they're turning out, and they're bringing groups of people, church groups, other groups, and if they can't go, they're buying tickets. And I just see, you just put it up there. It's number 12 now at the moment.
Yeah.
We need to get it up into that number, into the top 10. That's what we need to do, and we can still do that. It's Hollywood wants it to fail. Let's make sure we don't give them what they want.
Right.
Exactly. And I think also there's a book, right? Before you did the movie, there's a book that people could buy as well, right?
Yes, actually, yeah. Myself and my wife, we wrote a book, Gosnell, The Untold Story of America's Most Prolific Serial Killer. For those who prefer their information in the printed form, it became a New York Times bestseller. I mean, this is crazy. This is a film based on a New York Times bestseller. Media is ignoring it. And I see we've just brought out the paperback, and I see it's gone right back up Amazon lists. It was, before the film came out, it was at 50 or 60,000 sales. Now it's, I just looked last night, the paperback's at 1,000, less than 1,000. So if you could, click on the paperback there, you'll see, and go down, and then you can find it where it ranks. And it ranks, and you go down, it ranks, last I looked, it was 1,000. Yeah, click on that. Yeah, here we go. It's at, 1,300. Okay, it's 1,300. Best-selling book in the United States. Number 13. What I like is number 13 in serial killers. So people who like true crime, and that's a huge audience across the United States, are reading this book because they like serial killers. And that's got to be another thing with Netflix, is if we can get it high up on Netflix, people who watch a lot of crime, it's going to be recommended to them. Gosnell is going to be recommended to them because they like true crime. And people who are not interested in abortion are going to get an education they can never forget.
Has Gosnell shown any remorse?
No, we met him in prison.
Wow.
Myself and my wife. We visited him in prison. He spent most of the interview putting his hand on my wife's knee. And he is innocent, and he thinks he will be vindicated. History will vindicate him, and he will, history will vindicate him. That is, and he is innocent. That is it. He has no remorse. He's a charismatic, creepy guy, and he can be both creepy and charismatic at the same time. He's not mentally ill because he lies. We caught him in several lies. And
why does that make him not mentally ill?
Well, if he was mentally ill, he would have a thought process that he wouldn't lie. You know what I mean? Lying takes knowledge of doing wrong, that you're wrong, and you have to cover it up, right? He, in my amateur psychological opinion, right? So maybe there's people out there. I'd like to see the comments on this. Actually, maybe some psychiatrists can help me there. I understand if you're mentally ill, you have a way of the world, and it may be crazy, but you don't change your story. Your story is your story. He would say something, and we'd say, but that's not true. On the 14th of November, this happened. He'd go, oh yeah, that's correct, but and then he'd change the subject. So he would lie. We'd catch him out in a lie. He would admit the lie, but he would still keep going. So he knows. Why would you lie if you think you're innocent? That's my question.
And how long is he away for now?
Well, he was convicted in 2013, and he got 3 life sentences without parole. So
wow,
he's never getting.
Wow.
He was offered a deal. Funny, he was offered a deal that if he pled guilty, he would get life without parole, and his wife would keep the house, and she wouldn't go to prison. He turned that down. Then, when he was convicted, they were going to sentence him to death, probably, the jury were, and he was offered another deal that if he waived all rights to appeal, they would sentence him to life without parole. And he agreed to that, and then once he got into prison, he immediately started appealing his sentence and his conviction in complete contravention of what he agreed. So it seems nowadays you can't even trust criminals.
Especially not, right?
Yeah. The next thing he'll do is run for the DNC, and then you'll know he's a criminal. The film, of course, is Gosnell, the trial of America's biggest serial killer, and Dean Cain, of course, who played Superman on television, is in the film. Is there anything you want to share with us about the cast, about the filmmaking process, any anecdotes? I know you're on a tight
Dean's
schedule.
a great guy. Nick is a great guy. Nick is both the director and he plays Gosnell's pit bull, aggressive defense lawyer. If you read Nick's Twitter feed, you can see that being pit bull and aggressive comes naturally to him. And yeah, so you see Nick's had a huge career there with Castaway, Shape of Water, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. He's had a massive career, and he directed it and played Mike Cohen, Gosnell's defense lawyer. Dean is wonderful. Dean is a great gentleman. Tom Arnold, Roseanne's ex-husband, who's now doing an anti-Trump TV series, has attacked Dean and came at him, calling him. Dean went to the Value Voters Summit to promote Gosnell, and this was awful to Tom Arnold, and he attacked him and slandered him. And Dean approached him in a green room, and he immediately backed down and hugged it out and all that. And then, the coward that he is, when he left out the door, he immediately started attacking him on Twitter again. So Dean has come out under a lot of slings and arrows just for being in a movie, just for having, just to trying to tell a true story, and they've all been wonderful.
I happened to see Dean on, I think, Fox and Friends, maybe a week or so ago, and he was very effectively promoting this movie, and also explaining that he comes from a liberal background, is what he was saying, at least on Fox and Friends. Yeah,
he says he's pro-choice, etc. He says that, and I think, and he is, and he told me that when we started filming. I wonder if he had the choice now. I wonder I wonder where he'd be. Because this film is very affecting. The facts are very affecting. I know a lot of people. I know one actor who told me that it completely changed their opinion about abortion. Anyone who came in contact with this film has had their faith in abortion shook. Anyway, all I'd say is shook. I'm not saying they changed their minds, but it's made them think again. As my friend says, I have to rethink everything. And that's quite a compliment to this film and the actors in it.
Well,
what I find so interesting about it, Phil, and I haven't yet seen the film, but I certainly will. It reminds me a bit of the film Vaxxed, in as much as the mainstream media has tried to make this a very binary issue where you're either for or against. And there are so many subtleties to the way abortions are carried out, just in this conversation that we're having, that you've described the incredibly inhumane way in which a actual live birth, a human, would be treated, is pretty shocking. And as you said, I think when people have the full information, just as with vaccinations, it's not as simple as, yes or no. We want to know what's in there. We want to know the details of how these vaccines are developed and administered. Same thing with abortion. I think it's very important that we have a very detailed conversation about it before everybody takes to the streets with signs and screaming and clawing at doors and things like that.
Well, I don't know anything about vaccinations, and funny, and I didn't know anything about abortion either until I started this, and started researching the book and the film. And once you start researching and finding out the truth, you realize how little you knew, how little everyone else knows, and how important it is that they have knowledge. And that's why this film needs to become successful. So, but they're going to get on Netflix now, and it's going to be recommended to them, and they're going to hear things about the reality of abortion. That's the great thing about a trial, actually, is that people don't speak in political points or talking points or dogma or ideology. They have to give evidence. It has to be true, or it can be challenged in court.
Right.
And the truth then really tends to come out.
Absolutely. So people should go to the website gosnellmovie.com. You can click on the theaters tab, and then you can choose your state, and it will show you all of the theaters, over 600 theaters around the country that the film is playing in. So perhaps tonight is a good time for people to go out and see the movie. This will, of course, add to the weekend box office and maybe push those final Monday numbers up and get Gosnell up into the top 10 before the end of the weekend. I think that would be great for getting the word out and for helping to educate the public about what is, of course, a very, very serious matter. Was there anything else we wanted to cover, Phelim, before we allow you to go? I know you've got a limited amount of time.
I think we've said it all. I mean, as you say, a little boost now could get us into the top 10, and then the media can no longer ignore us. I mean, it wasn't reviewed in the New York Times, it wasn't reviewed in Hollywood Reporter, it wasn't reviewed in Variety, none of them. And this is a boost like this, getting us into the top 10, forces them to do that.
Absolutely.
Well, let's hope that works for you.
I'm going to go see the film tonight.
Oh, great. Well, thank you.
Thank you. And thanks so much for joining us, Phelim. We'll be back in touch with you in the future. Best of luck with the film, and congratulations on what is, of course, a historic opening for an independent crime drama. The movie, of course, is Gosnell. Where did I put the website? Here we go. I'm on the theaters thing. I want to make sure everybody knows the film by name. It's called Gosnell, The Trial of America's Biggest Serial Killer. And it's a compelling film that people should go see no matter what side of this debate you're on. You're going to learn quite a lot about a true story of the most notorious abortion doctor who is now in prison.
For life.
And for death.
Yep.
So thanks again, Phelim, and regards to your wife.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. All right. So there we go, Charles. That was a very interesting interview with our friend Phelim there. That's a fascinating film that I hope that people will go and see. A little bit of a departure from our normal opening of the show, but that's nice. That's
mixing it up. Maybe
mixing
we should
it up.
Go back to the art department. We got to go back in, I think, to give appropriate worship to the art department.
Well, thank you. It's a bit of a comedic moment for, sort of a strange thing to follow. But, it's interesting, Charles, because we came up with this back to school idea, but then there's been so much reporting about a story that certainly came to me in a very organic way, and that's the strange death of Peter Smith. He's come back around in terms of being in the news and being really a focus of attention for Robert Mueller. There seem to be a lot of people trying to tie him to General Flynn. We're going to be talking about some facts and evidence that really only you have. So this is a world exclusive for everyone. If you're working for the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post, or if your name is like maybe, I don't know, Shane Harris, you should probably watch this broadcast and learn some things about the facts related to the death of Peter Smith, rather than some of the fictional things that have been written so far.
Right, exactly. And what we're going to do, this is the reason we opened with this wonderful man, and his wife, I guess, was going to join us, but then she got pulled away, is to suit their schedule. They can only do it at 3 o'clock. This broadcast is going to focus on the Clinton Global Initiative, and more specifically the Clinton Global Initiative University, which is where Jason would normally say, they have a university? So I'll do it for you.
Grifter's got to learn how to grift somehow, Charles.
Right, but it's especially interesting story because we all know that in the double standard department, Donald Trump people operated Trump University, had to pay a $20 million fine for operating something that actually was providing a fair amount of benefits to the students, learning about how to do real estate development, real estate finance, things like that. There were just a few people who complained about it. In the end, because Trump University was not appropriately registered in New York, where it was operating, enormous leverage was brought by the New York State Attorney General and Department of Education and Donald Trump just between the time he won election and started, as he had to pay this fine.
But isn't that a point of note that they only went after it when he became president? They weren't really, and it sounded, I didn't look very closely at it, but it sounded like maybe some sales reps were maybe high pressure, and that was...
Well, and that's why it's so important to focus on this one. We've talked about it before, that the Clinton Global Initiative University is a joint venture between a portion of the Clinton Foundation that doesn't exist legally and a for-profit seeking, highly leveraged, very dangerously capitalized, in my opinion, highly questionable leveraged buyout operation backed by some of the biggest names in the universe, the pantheon of greatness in financial investing, so KKR, Goldberg Kravis, and people like that. And ordinarily, if you want to do, if you have a charity and you want to do a joint venture, it's very tough to do that actually, with a for-profit seeking operation. Generally, the IRS looks very carefully at that and says, oh, wait a minute, how does a charity pair up with a profit-seeking, rapacious...
Seems incompatible.
Yeah, you're not really supposed to do it that way. We're going to show you that this is a textbook case. We've gone through so many of the big issues. This is actually, in terms of impact around the country, I think it's a big issue, but in terms of monetary impact, it isn't the biggest piece of the Clinton fraud.
Now, while you're talking about textbooks, I'd like to ask what might be a very stupid question. I think there's a lot of people watching who maybe don't know, what is a leveraged buyout, Charles?
So a leveraged buyout is where you put a group together to buy, typically, you can do private companies, but typically public companies. You use the credit capacity of the target to borrow money to pay off the shareholders and take control of the asset, and typically you run it differently. So generally, I started actually doing this a long time ago in 81, 82, and that was at a moment in time, and I was just a junior guy then, with more experienced people doing it. That was in a moment in time where many owners of companies were fearful of debt, so they wouldn't borrow. And you'd see a company that had a lot of cash in it, no borrowings, and management was happy, just sort of coasting, not shooting for the moon. And you could buy such a company very cheaply. And oftentimes, I did one of them where I got money back, because you could borrow more money than you needed to buy the company, and you could pay yourself a dividend. So leveraged buyouts started, really they've been going on for a long time, but in popular recent times, late 70s, early 80s, and it's now become really a very commoditized business. There's little separates one leveraged buyout operator from another, and prices are so high now, and interest rates are rising, that it doesn't really make sense, I would argue, to buy a company using a lot of debt whose cost might rise with interest rates. And
the cost of the debt.
The debt would rise and the value of what you bought would go down. And so
it's risky business.
It is definitely risky business.
And it doesn't seem compatible with charity.
Not at all. So if we go into but this art department again is just, I don't know who works in it, but whoever does is doing a great job.
Real busy, thank you.
So if we go to the second page, actually, or actually the first page. We try to do this, and I guess this is our 111th broadcast together, Jason, which is, I don't know if there's any numerology.
There is.
Is a 111, but
yeah.
But the bottom line, what we try to do on the first page of these presentations is to give you the gist of what we're going to talk about. We have a bonus on Peter Smith that's not covered here, but in the summary. But basically, Bill got together and somehow, because he has absolutely no credentials whatsoever in education.
In education.
Right.
I was going to enumerate his many rape charges.
Right. But he was able to convince these operators, these sharp operators, to give him a part-time job as chancellor of Laureate Education, which is for-profit universities. Now, let's think about for-profit universities. We've talked in general terms in the past about this, that here's an area where I actually agree with Barack Obama and the administration. I don't think that for liberal arts programs, social sciences, I don't think those should be taught in for-profit universities. I think if you've got law schools, business schools, medical schools, dentistry schools, where you're basically taking somebody who's smart, turning them into an apprentice to then
Put them in a profession.
go to a profession. I can see how that should be a for-profit operation. But why would you ever say, if you've got a choice between, if you've got a talented kid who can go to NYU film school, and that's not-for-profit operation actually.
That's crazy.
But it is. It's not for profit. Why would you? Why would you want that very talented person who's taught by some of the best professors out there in the industry? Why would you say no, Jason? Don't do that. Go over here to Acme Film Company, and
New York Film Academy.
Right. And
right
don't
up the
ask.
street.
Right. And don't ask how much money, how much the profit is going into the promoter of this New York Film Academy. Because at least in NYU Film School, the profit should be reinvested. There is no profit to speak of, but the difference between the revenues and the expenses should stay back in the school, either to pay for overhead or to build up an endowment or to pay, have more special programs or to expand it. So the notion of encouraging these gigantic for-profit universities that are then, in this case with Laureate, set up all over the world, including in multiple countries where such operations are illegal. And it says in the offering documents for this Laureate, we operate in many countries where we're not allowed to do it, and we just fight it off with lawsuits. It's basically
What?
You look at it. And so this company, which is, in my view, very sketchy, and has had a lot of management turnover after, frankly, we started exposing Laureate, in various articles and in print, et cetera, and interviews. This company decides, you know what? Bill is the husband of the Secretary of State. We need cover internationally. Why don't we hire him, 5-year deal, and we'll pay him $17.6 million for part-time work.
That's crazy.
I mean, that should not, it shouldn't even be a discussion. It should have been, when somebody came in, with the argument that Bill should be able to do this, whoever in the Obama administration, if there was anybody who knew the difference between right and wrong, that person should have said, listen, that's such a good idea that if I ever see you in this office again, you're going to live for the rest of your life in the Sahara Desert with no water.
A serious question, though, Charles. So in the case of something like New York University, where I go there for film school and then conceivably I go on and make movies like Spider-Man and X-Men and whatever, why the hell is NYU getting tax exemption for that? They're getting money from me to go there.
Well, so, film school is an interesting one because I would argue, technically it could be more of a professional school than, because you got the credentials you needed to go be a director.
Not even, because you just show up there in Hollywood and say, hey, I'm a director, and people say, we don't believe you until you make something like Blair Witch Project or Hostel or whatever, and it goes in. Like, in other words, our friend Phelan there, if this film, there are going to be other producers of crime films who are going to want to know, how did you make a $2 million movie get into 600 theaters and earn $1 million? That's significant. I mean, to spend 2.3 and then the first 3 days it's out, it's made back 1.3 or whatever that was. That's incredible performance for a film. So there'll be people in Hollywood who are going to want to hire him to go do other films, and he didn't necessarily go to film school. I think NYU is a total sham.
Oh, no comment. But so we're going to focus on this Clinton Global Initiative University. We're going to focus on the fact that the Clinton Global Initiative began operating without being legally authorized. Then, when they got caught, they tried to reorganize it, and they lied on their applications, but nonetheless got approved by the IRS because we had fancy Lois Lerner there covering it all off, and Barack Obama was president. We're going to take you through this in some copious detail. And as you think about this, just remember, those of you who are watching this for the first time and just getting acquainted with why we're on this crusade against the Clintons, people have described me as a Clinton hater. I'm not a Clinton hater. I'm a fraud hater. And
it's synonymous.
Well, in this case, so I'm on this. I went after GE because I view it was and is a fraud. Okay, and I started with that first in 2007 and 2008. Spent a lot of time on it. And it's still taking time to get the thing fully exposed. In the case of the Clinton charity. I expected it to be very well organized and well run. After all, you have Yale Law School graduates, a Rhodes Scholar. You've got a former president, attorney general, governor, secretary of state, senator, aspiring president. I would have thought, especially now that they have a bit of coin in the bank, that they would have thought, it's not going to be such a great idea to get tagged for running a crooked charity, because everyone, when this goes down, everybody's going to be looking at three people: Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton. And they're all going to say, we didn't know this.
Right.
We assumed this was legit. So this
That's called being left holding the bag.
As it were. Yeah, the Clinton Foundation is only authorized to do work out of Little Rock, Arkansas, to hold the presidential records that, we don't even know if we have all of them from his 8 years as president, from January 20th, 93, January 20th, 2001, to hold those records and to have an allied research center in Little Rock. That's the only thing that it's lawfully operated to do. And we're going to explain to you just how badly they erred in going off course. We're going to show you in gory detail, actually, in a few minutes. So if we go to the next page, this is our standard disclaimer. And as I think about what's happening around the world, where people are, what the social media giants are, shutting down the ability of people to expose certain viewpoints, governments in Sweden, where we talk with Biljana and other people, are saying, no, you don't actually have a First Amendment right that's enforceable in our country. We're going to decide what speech is hate speech and what speech is allowed. It's important to remember, especially when we think about whether the founders should be revered or not, and whether America truly is a great country. When Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, and afterwards when the founders got together and did the Constitution, they risked a tremendous amount. In those days, the penalty for going up against the king was brutal.
Death, right?
Well, much worse than death.
Torture.
Much even worse than that. So the penalty was, if you go up against the king in the way all these people did, first of all, you're hanged, drawn, and quartered, which is a process where you're dragged behind you're hanged, but not to death. Then you're dragged behind a cart, through the streets with lots of crap in the streets.
That's the drawn part.
And then they cut you into quarters.
Pull you with horses.
And then
right?
you're dead. Then they take the pieces of your body and they put them on pikes outside on the walls of the city, where they stay until the buzzards or whatever eat forever, and it stinks, whatever. And that's not even the worst part. In addition to that, your family is never allowed to own property again. I mean, it was the cruel and inhumane punishments that existed at that time were so outrageous. And yet these people, said, many of them were rich and powerful, and they said, you know what, this is important enough, we're going to stand up, we're going to make a difference. And they secured for us the right that allows Crowdsource the Truth to do all the good stuff you're doing, and that is to seek the truth with a now subscriber base of more than 68,000 people and friends and allies. So we don't abuse that privilege. What we try to do is lay out in these analyses background information so that you and the crowd can check our work, expand on our work, make the kinds of constructive suggestions that we love to get from you. You can contact us on my website and our two Twitter handles. I think, have we shown the playlist yet? I don't know.
Haven't shown it yet, but of course, people who want to follow you on Twitter, Charles, they should go there. You are at Charles Ortel. Is this down from last week?
No, it's up.
It's up, okay. But still, it's a slow increase. I've noticed that my Twitter following is down. Perhaps people are dissatisfied with my tweets, although the nature of them hasn't really changed. But people can follow Crowdsource the Truth on Twitter at CS the Truth. And
I know why you're losing followers. Go down there. Why'd you let that picture on your
because
site?
this is, somebody said, it was Brandon Straka, the founder of the hashtag Walk Away campaign, who said that the KKK has been universally condemned. And I said, no, it wasn't. Hillary Clinton was good friends with Klansman / Senator Robert Byrd. And I find it really interesting how many people will defend this guy saying, oh, He renounced the KKK towards the end of his career, but anybody's got the last name Cohen or anything Jewish, immediately they're a Zionist shill for Israel and guilty and condemned to hell for the rest of their lives. This guy is a Klansman, but he's all right. He was a nice guy in the end.
Wasn't he the most senior guy in the Senate?
He was. He was there during the confirmation of, he came into my mind recently because I was watching a video clip of the confirmation of Donald Rumsfeld as Secretary of Defense, which was really just shortly prior to September 11th, right. 2001. And they're all there yucking it up in the Senate, having a good old time. It's a stark contrast to the hearings that we see today, where the Democrats are going crazy on the Trump appointees. And I mean, knowing now what we know about September 11th and Donald Rumsfeld declaring war on the Pentagon over this missing 2.7 trillion, the death of the 30 some odd naval forensic accounting investigators who were there in the Pentagon, who got hit by the airplane that struck the Pentagon on September 11th. And that investigation into the 2.7 trillion vanished. I found it very interesting to see Klansman Senator Robert Byrd cackling hilariously with Donald Rumsfeld and being kissed by Hillary Clinton, but I digress. Yeah. People should go to charlesortel.com, and if they want to email you directly, they can Google contact me and charlesortel.com, and they will find that. We wanted to also remind everybody about the playlist, the Sunday with Charles playlist that's available on the Jason Goodman YouTube channel, the original home of Crowdsource the Truth. And this is handy because it's a compilation of all of the Sunday with Charles episodes, all of the Charles Ortel is Closing In episodes, and even during the time period where we were under YouTube ban, due, I believe, mostly to malicious anonymous strikes from mischievous individuals who like to do all kinds of subversive and underhanded things to try to delay the progress of Crowdsource the Truth. So people can just go to YouTube and search for Crowdsource the Truth or Sunday with Charles or Jason Goodman, and they're going to get right to that resource. And if you're working for the FBI or some sort of law enforcement agency, all of the evidence is right here.
Right.
You don't have to leave the comfort of your office. You could text your mistress while you watch.
Yeah, we jest about that. I know that Jason and I both believe that the line people, not the management people, the line people, kidding. I know, I just want to make sure, because the line people really do excellent work. It's just that it would seem, from what we know so far, that the management in both the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation may need to be reshuffled here.
Indeed. And, it's, well, here we have Mr. Rodenstein, who we can talk about later.
So if we go to the first page after that, next one after that. Okay, we've talked briefly about the Gosnell film, and I had made reference to this Los Angeles Times review, and I just put portions of it up there with a link to the review. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that it's not as scathing as I imagine it might be. And oftentimes, actually, back when I used to watch movies in the theater, the comedy movies, whenever the reviews were horrible, then I knew it was great. So in that vein, this really is, I think it's probably a fair summary, a little smug, but it could have been a lot worse.
Well, it was interesting that Phelim said that it seemed as if the person had just watched the trailer and reviewed it. Something that I found really interesting, Charles, was that I have no direct evidence of this, but I'm pretty confident that just as there's fake news, I think there's fake reviews.
Oh, I don't doubt it, yeah.
I think if you take out a lot of ads in the Hollywood Reporter, you might get a better review for your film than if you don't do that.
You think?
And I don't mean to single out the Hollywood Reporter, but I do think it's pretty well understood that some films are just terrible and don't care what the reviewers say. Some films rely very heavily on what a review might say, and there's a whole lot of gray area in there that distributors and producers or whoever can do things.
And of course, given Google, Facebook, and Twitter, the declining ad revenues in the print media mean that if you're prepared to spend money on advertisement in print media, then suddenly that print media will be, in theory, a lot more happy about what you're doing.
And that is the whole entire reason why I've moved so much broadcasting on Crowdsource the Truth to patreon.com/crowdsource the truth, because I find the whole entire advertiser-driven, corporate-owned model for delivery of news to be a broken method. So everybody who wants information to be free needs to understand that it's free because Google is paying the people who have ads on their channel, and if you're producing content that's not ad-friendly, that's another mechanism of control that they can use to shut down that type of speech. So it's super important that people who find what we do here on Crowdsource the Truth remotely interesting or valuable, that they become sponsors by going to patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. Even $1 a month, as you said, we're at 68,400 people. So a small fraction of those viewers becoming monthly subscribers will keep the company financially healthy and allow us to continue with the type of broadcasting that we're doing. And it also allows the sponsors to enjoy loads of exclusive programming there on patreon.com/crowdsource the truth.
Great. So hats off to the two screenplay authors and producers of this Gosnell movie. I too will probably go to see this movie.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting.
So we've got a lot of meat in this presentation, and we are not going to do what happened and what will happen. We're just going to give you, to begin with, 8 overview points we hope you'll take away here.
Brass tacks.
What's I think happened for people who like to learn. I remember actually, I have early memories of falling down as a little baby, and I escaped from my crib, and I fell pretty hard getting out of it.
Clint Eastwood, you hit a spoon.
I've never been the same as a result. But
hit a spoon in the prison wallet and then dug your way out.
No, actually, I was born on January 11th, and
one, Charles.
That's right. And I was born, January 11th. And I remember it must have been going up on my first birthday that I didn't want to be alone in my room, and I heard the doorbell ring downstairs, and it was a bunch of Christmas carolers.
Wow.
Who had come to this. We were living in New Jersey, and in Summit, New Jersey, and I said, I'm down with that. So I got out of
one?
Less than one. I got out of my crib. I pulled myself up, and then I tumbled over the top of it.
Wow.
And then I started going down the stairs, and my father was watching the carolers, and he looked up the stairs and goes, "Whoa, what is this kid doing?" Going head first down.
That's amazing.
And but anyway. You learn from those falls. You learn by making mistakes. Hopefully you don't make life-threatening mistakes. Right. And I think what's happened, honestly, in this period since November 8th, I guess it was, 2016, where Donald Trump shocked, didn't shock us, but he shocked.
I was shocked.
Oh, really? I was not shocked.
I was worried that he wouldn't win.
Really?
I just thought he wouldn't be able to overcome the cheating.
But when he shocked everybody, and then now he never got a honeymoon in the whole period, right? And think of the accomplishments this man has had, and his team has had in the face of this resistance. With Obama, it was like, he woke up in the morning and it's, the president is Barack Obama.
Nobel Prize.
Why don't you take a Nobel Prize? We can't give you the Olympics, so take a Nobel Prize. Would you like a book deal?
Yeah. How's $65 million? Man, make it more.
Right. And you don't even have to work. Valerie Jarrett will do all your work for you. But the fact that even the critics, the staunchest critics of President Trump, have to admit now, when they look at their paychecks, if they're working, that they're getting more money, that costs of certain medical treatments are going down.
Is it?
Our standing in the world is improved.
The Korea thing is huge in my mind.
And there's a long list of that. So
you know what I really like about what's happened with Korea, Charles? Trump started out calling him Rocket Man and a fat little guy and whatever, and like really insulting him. But now that he's come to the table, he calls him Chairman Kim,
right,
and he's complimentary. And so maybe there's a method to his madness.
Oh, yeah. It's smart. And then, I won't watch Saturday Night Live anymore, but if we hit this first link, the Saturday Night Live cold open
Yeah.
attempted to make fun of Donald Trump's meeting with Kanye West. And I think people who are, looking down their nose at this meeting, particularly those in the Democratic Party, are in for a very rude surprise. Very, very rude surprise. Because, quite frankly, Democrats have kept control of many of the inner city governments around this country, where the African American and other minority communities have not thrived under these policies that are basically, they might have made sense in 1930, to infrastructure projects and, but they don't make sense today. And so here's this guy thinking he's really funny, Alec Baldwin.
I do like Alec Baldwin, though.
Yeah, he can be funny, but very irritating. And, making fun of Kanye West, who Kanye West has been out there.
He's a little off the wall, but I appreciate that he's supporting the president.
He's made a lot of money, and he's done a lot pretty well. And then, I don't know if you had a chance to see this you don't have to hit it, but this pastor here with Donald Trump, the guy who was in Turkey, I'm not religious, but it was an extremely moving moment to see this guy who had just gotten off a plane, having been in prison for 2 years in Turkey, and I doubt, it was like staying in a La Quinta Inn. Probably. It's
not like prison in Saudi Arabia.
But seriously, the guy had been, in prison, probably not treated all that well. And he gets off a plane, he gets checked out to make sure he's all right, I think in Germany, and then he flies from Turkey to Germany to Washington, D.C., to wherever it is, the airport, and then goes directly into the Oval Office, and then decides he's going to kneel and pray for Donald Trump.
Wow.
Really moving stuff. And there are people who think about, who are very suspicious about Donald Trump, because he has affected this support for Christianity and for religion and evangelicals and all that kind of stuff. And then him from his Playboy youth.
Yeah, he's not that religious.
That doesn't seem, but as he aged, I think he's become more religious. And I think, the mainstream press is really missing what's going on here. That people are no longer just saying whatever fake yapper has to say at CNN or Anderson Cooper or the people at MSNBC or whatever. People aren't listening to that stuff anymore. They're thinking for themselves. And Donald Trump, I think, is going to do, and the people who support Donald Trump, not all Republicans, the Republicans who are never Trumpers or lukewarm on Trump, I don't think they're going to do that well in the election. But those who have embraced Donald Trump, helped Donald Trump, are going to do pretty well. And I think these socialists, they're going to learn maybe they won't be capable of learning the hard lesson that they should learn, but they're not going to be happy. Here it's also important to remember I'd hit that YouTube thing. People people are fundamentally, this is the whole long meeting with the pastor.
He looks pretty good for a guy who's been in jail for 2 years.
And note, it's only 13,000 views, Jason.
Wow.
Right? So,
and that's the White House official thing.
So it gives you a better sense of our numbers. So this is something I would encourage our viewership to watch. And remember, maybe not in Los Angeles, certainly not in Greenwich Village, Chicago, Dallas, etc. It's a different way of thinking, but in the heartland of America, in the rural communities, indeed the suburbs, away from the biggest cities, people in this country are fundamentally religious. They may not all be Christian or Jewish or Hindu or Muslim, but they're fundamentally respectful. They believe in a higher power. They believe perhaps that man is not the most important being in the universe and that maybe we can all learn from some higher power. So the people are scoffing at this and thinking that this is not going to have an impact on the midterms. Again, they're going to be, and in the 2020 election, they're going to be in for a very rude shock, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
So if we go back in.
It's interesting to see who comes into the comments when we do shows that have important information about controversial topics.
Well, I can't see the comments, but...
You're better off.
Not? All right.
Yeah.
So if we hit this third link, we talked about the Gosnell movie, but this is getting a fair amount of traction in Here's the Christian Post. But it's really getting more traction than I thought it would. I would have thought that what they would have tried to do, which would have restricted the release of this, was to say that it had to be either unrated or R. They got a PG-13 on it, so
Wow.
that allowed them to do the release that they've done here. And I really do believe, and particularly when you think about the Kavanaugh situation, the way he was treated, I think most unfairly, the same people who would savage a Kavanaugh over unvetted claims that should have actually been vetted, but instead Feinstein corrupted the whole process, and Schumer too probably, will savage somebody over that. Those people should be taking a step back and saying, now wait a minute, why am I so sure? I'm a woman who's now, let's say, 55, 60, let's say I had an abortion and I can't have a child. Do I really feel good about that? Might I not have been better off finding somebody to be with, assuming I like men, and having one or more children? Might that not have been a more fulfilling thing to do? I think there are many, many people who, I know many of them actually, who have these regrets, and they say, yeah, God, I wish I had done things differently. Because you think, it's easy to say, and I really repugnant of, I think it was Barack Obama to say, I wouldn't want one of my daughters to be burdened by a baby.
Whoa.
And, I don't view babies as a burden, and I know that there are many, many people, particularly in the United States, who can't have children and who would love to adopt babies. It's not like there isn't a home out there for anybody who wants to find, most people who have a baby anyway, it's pretty easy to place a baby in a good home. And so this documentary, I think, it really is, I can't say enough about it. I haven't seen the whole thing, but I've heard this gentleman and his wife before talk about the book and then the movie coming. I really think it's something that we ought to have a deep debate about it.
Well, I mean, like I said to Phelim, I think it's very much like the vaccine debate in that the mainstream wants to make it a very binary, you're either for it or against it, and it's such a complex issue that it needs to be explored and discussed much more deeply than just that.
I agree. And so another big takeaway here is that this Mueller investigation seems, in fact, to be coming to a close.
We've heard that so many times, Charles. What indicates that it's coming to a close now?
Well, just lots of different people are saying it. It stands to reason when you think about the facts that collusion isn't a crime, and I don't see any evidence of collusion. And now this is a John Solomon piece just out. Saying that in his mind, in the minds of these experienced investigative reporters, this whole idea that there's a complex plot involving Alpha Bank and Trump Tower and all this kind of stuff is just spinning. It's not been proven. But beyond that, the process by which, and this is something I hope the crowd and others will be helpful on, the process by which Comey was fired and then Mueller was hired is a process that has not gotten the type of scrutiny it deserves.
It's a process that was headed up by our favorite rodent.
Right, well, but it just has not, it really needs to be gone over in granular detail, because this is the kind of precedent that, I mean, it wouldn't at all surprise me that Hillary Clinton and her people were very much involved pulling the strings on James Comey and others inside and outside the United States to, in a fit of pique, make life miserable for Donald Trump. Damn the law, damn the regulations, damn the precedents. Queen Hillary will have her way. And I think it's past comeuppance time. And 17 months is a lot of time for Mueller and his team of angry, however many they are.
Yeah, it's more than 13 now. Larry Klayman and others have discussed with me many times that you can't just start an investigation with a special counsel and investigate until you find a crime. There needs to be a specific allegation of a crime, and based on the fact that there hasn't been, it could be shut down any time.
Right. And I think the tension there is that the concern that while there may not have been a crime, then if we shut the investigation down,
then they'll say it's obstruction of justice, and there's no winning with these losers.
Yeah. So you'll notice here there's a lot of green, there's only one red. And I'm beginning to think, and we're going to start talking about this in more depth today, that the question of a foreign power colluding with anyone is a rubbish exercise thinking about Russia but a very meaningful exercise thinking about England.
Why does Ronald Reagan have anything to do with it?
Well, because Reagan had a very strong relationship with the right people.
Maggie Thatcher?
In the UK, whereas HW and certainly the Clintons, they were more in with the left-leaning globalist people in the UK. They're conservatives, they're, you know.
All I really remember about Margaret Thatcher was something in the Falkland Islands.
No, she was wonderful. I mean, she was I actually met her.
You did?
Yeah,
Wow.
on a plane. It was, she's very...
Was she the first female, what was she, the Prime Minister?
Prime Minister? I don't know. She might have been. I don't know my English history well enough. But so I think what we're going to find out here is that in fact, and if we hit this link, the zero hedge link, in fact, what was going on under Obama, and perhaps before that, is the Brits felt, and in particular the English portion of the Brits, felt that while we in monetary terms in the United States were the senior partner, in terms of intellectual firepower, they were far smarter.
They always think that, the British.
They really do. And so, you know, they'll take our money and, you know, let us pretend that we're the most powerful economy, but they'll direct everything in the back. And I think Trump's presidency and his support of Nigel Farage and the Leave campaign really, and his anti-globalist attitude.
Nigel Farage said something I found objectionable today. We don't have to talk about it.
So I think, though, that if we're going to talk about colluding, foreign powers colluding with the Democrats and never Trump Republicans, I think there is a story to be told here involving the United Kingdom, GCHQ, MI6, and the think tanks and the universities and investment firms and powerful people who hang around in the UK, thinking that, you know, it was irresponsible for the United States to allow itself to end up being run by somebody as vulgar and, you know, rubish as Donald Trump. So they were really doing us a service here, you know, making sure that the election was rigged, making sure that, you know, if by some miracle Donald Trump won, that, you know, we get rid of him quickly and have, you know, a more. I think that's going to be a thing. That's more of a real story here.
This is coming from the same country that had a children's television star / pedophile necrophiliac who was best friends with the royal family and posthumously convicted of like 598 child rapes. So they must know something.
There are good apples and a lot of bad apples in the UK. But if we go back into the slide, we've spent a lot of time on Peter Smith.
Yes.
And in recent 10-day period or so, folks at the Wall Street Journal, folks at the Washington Post, folks at CNN are starting to go back into the Peter Smith story. And we're going to talk a little bit about, you know, some big things that we believe we found in the recent days. But a core point here is if we hit that Wall Street Journal link, we're going to show to you that these recent stories about Peter Smith being an opposition researcher trying to raise money to find these WikiLeaks, find these missing emails, rests in fact on a report from a young person that has never been vetted. And indeed, this person has never actually been vetted. Because without telling the name of the people we're talking to, I'll just say that both, and I have it in writing, both the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post have confirmed to me, and I've asked multiple times, that neither organization has a copy of this marketing brochure in which I'm named. Neither organization had it. Neither organization had a chance to submit the document to the type of forensic testing that you might do or others might do
to see if it's a forgery.
If it's a forgery, what's its origin, how many times was it changed. Nobody had that opportunity. Instead, Shane Harris, who was he had a decent track record, but he was working at the Daily Beast.
Yeah.
He comes to the Wall Street Journal in his first 6 weeks, and he has this source that supposedly comes to him with his marketing document, and nobody really checks it. And suddenly, Peter Smith is, connected to senior people in theory of the Trump campaign, of course, after his death, so he can't, debate any of this. And I think this could well be another case. This Shane Harris and Matthew Tate thing that we're going to get to could be journalistic malpractice.
I agree. I think these two men have deliberately lied.
Yeah. So we're going to go into that at the end of the broadcast in some depth. If we go back to the slide, there's this theory that Peter Smith was close to Lieutenant General Mike Flynn and his son, and that's being sold by the Wall Street Journal because they claim, we've had it directly from them, that they spoke to Flynn's lawyer, and Flynn's lawyer confirmed that to be the case. Now, Flynn's lawyer is Covington and Burling, and Covington Burling's a big firm.
What's his name? Kellner?
Kellner, yeah.
What's his first name?
I don't know. But Covington and Burling is a very big firm, and those type of firms typically have Republicans and Democrats in them.
Robert Kellner, I think?
Yeah. But one of the most visible partners of Covington and Burling is Eric Holder. And the notion that Flynn would really believe he's going to be well represented by Covington and Burling, and that, when Covington and Burling thinks through, let me think, the interests of the Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton, Qatar, all these big clients, or the interests of Michael Flynn. I think I'll go with my core business and not Michael Flynn. So I don't understand why Flynn is working, or has retained Covington and Burling, and I don't understand why we would be so quick to take the word of Covington and Burling on anything.
It's interesting, Charles. I did an episode with Scott Bennett earlier in the week, and of course, Scott is the retired Army intelligence officer and the author of the book Shell Game, in which he describes the activities of Covington and Burling, and whoops, we got a little dropout there on the thing. Anyway, Scott went into great detail about his criminal charges that were brought against him, totally fraudulent. He was framed by the police for a charge of improperly writing something on a document. It was the first time in history that a member of the U.S. military was charged with this, and he was basically wrangled into accepting Donna Shalala's grandson as his lawyer. It was recommended to him by his own lawyer, who he trusted, and then before he knew what was happening, he was roped into accepting a plea deal that had him on a bus to jail for 4 years, and he literally had no idea what was going on. So I suspect that someone directed General Flynn to be represented by Covington and Burling. I do not trust Covington and Burling, and if Robert Kellner says that Michael Flynn, or we don't even have a recording of Michael Kellner saying that. Robert Kellner. We have a report from a paper saying that he said that. And in my experience of asking them, well, who said that? Where did you see this? They say, well, this guy said it, that guy said it. I trust him because he writes for the Wall Street Journal or whatever. I want to really hear what the background is. Why would his lawyer even say that?
And it's also inconsistent with other evidence that we'll get to, that was real evidence.
Yes.
So if we go back to the slide then, this lawfare. Now, lawfare is run in part by this Benjamin Wittes, who is a close friend of the leaking liar Comey and a frequent guest on MSNBC. And if we hit that Matt Tate link that you had it right there. Yeah, there we go.
I think it's important that we distinguish between the practice of lawfare and this blog called Lawfare. I find it very interesting. Lawfare is the legal equivalent of warfare, using the law to do battle with your enemies.
So here's Matt Tate, who was born in August of 1988. Okay, so today he's 30. Okay, we don't know exactly when he was at these different places, but a lot of hash is made over the fact that he was, quote, CEO of Capital Alpha Security, a consultancy in the UK. We're going to show you just how infinitesimally small Capital Alpha Security was. And we're also, if you take the time, we're not going to do it, but if you take the time to go through his blog posts, and his various interviews, whenever people write about him and they ask his opinion, a central buttress for the seriousness of his view is that previously he was the CEO, or maybe he still was CEO of Capital Alpha Security. That's a great name, sounds great. Capital Alpha Security, Could be
money,
yeah.
alpha male, security. This is all.
These are good.
You've got emotional responses to these words. Joking aside, I agree.
I mean, Mandalay Industries.
Vandalay. That's right. You want to be the latex salesman. Matt Tate. I do not trust Matt Tate, and I've said it many times.
Right. So I have contacted Matt Tate via Twitter saying, listen, I want to see, you've shown a document that purports to mention my name.
I bet he didn't.
I want to
write
see
back.
that document. Of course not.
Didn't write back, because he's a coward and a liar.
Yeah. So I don't think Tate was, if we go back just for a second, I don't think Tate was appropriately enough checked out. And I'd say as one headline on the overview takeaway, what I'm seeing is, absent a crash, absent a terrorist incident, absent big reversal in one of these military conflicts, I see a red wave building that's much more likely to build to a crescendo, absent these obstacles that could occur between now and November 6th. And I think we might be very happy with what happens in the midterm elections if people get out and vote.
I think people should also share this video with their friends who are skeptical of the things that we might be saying, because unlike shows like Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, we're going to be showing actual evidence from messages from the guy being accused, rather than just reiterating the same old, inaccurate stories to try to drown out the facts. We are going to re-up with new facts that people haven't seen before.
All right, so let's talk. We're going to talk now about the Clinton Global Initiative scam, which it really is, in my opinion, and the Clinton Global Initiative University. So the Clinton Global Initiative University was supposedly part of the Clinton Global Initiative. Now, in 2010, in August of 2010, the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton Global Initiative, filled out an application on Form 1023. Here's the link to it. Jason, don't hit it because it'll take too long to load. But you can see it for yourself what they filled out, all right? And this wrote on 9th of August 2010, the CEO of the Clinton Global Initiative, Inc., a Rhodes Scholar, answered this question: are you a successor to another organization? He said no. Okay, this is on August 9th, 2010. This is on Part 7, Your History, Question 1 of that form. In Part 9, Financial Data, the same team, and maybe this Rhodes Scholar is not good with numbers, the same team filled out a schedule that said all of these results here, these specific results, occurred when? In 2009. How could you have $25 million of revenue and $24 million of expenses in 2009 and not be a successor organization on the 9th of August 2010? It's ridiculous. Right? It's absolutely ridiculous. And in addition, we are good friends and we're not good friends at notorious BKD. They put together an audit, in quotes, for the Clinton Foundation for 2009, which basically explained that the Clinton Global Initiative was formed in 2009, and they say it had no activity through December 31st, 2009. This is the activity that they say to the IRS, 25 million is no activity. And what they were doing is doing a shell game. They were saying, what we'll do is we'll create a new company over here, we'll call it Clinton Global Initiative, Inc. And that new shell company didn't do anything, but something else called Clinton Global Initiative did do something in 2009. That's form over substance. The substance here is that they began illegally operating this thing we're going to get into called the Clinton Global Initiative in 2004 without IRS authority. They operated in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and then they fill out this yet another lying application with multiple material false statements under penalties of perjury. Okay, this gets submitted with Bill Clinton's name associated with it, lots of other powerful people, and of course, because Lois Lerner is in charge of the IRS department that would approve these sort of applications, goes in August of 2010, and the application is immediately approved in early October 2010, whereas the Tea Party applications, the conservative applications in this time frame, they're slow-walked, okay?
You know, Charles, part of the reason why we're able to even do this show is that your mind works in a way where you are able to retain information and make connections that most people, frankly, cannot. And just now, while you were talking, I realized something that I think it's important that we share with everybody in the audience. We've spoken so many times about Rhodes Scholars and how they're all connected, but I don't really even know what that means to be a Rhodes Scholar. I had just sort of generally presumed it meant a certain level of academic achievement, but what I've realized just now in briefly Googling one of my least favorite people, Rachel Maddow, who is also a Rhodes Scholar, is that it's not just an academic achievement. You become the recipient of a scholarship, which means money.
Yeah, Rhodes Scholars, it was Cecil Rhodes, the controversial founder of both, I think Zimbabwe, used to be called Rhodesia, and I think it was South Africa though, felt guilty, and towards the end of his life set up this Rhodes Scholarship Trust, the Rhodes Trust.
Felt guilty about what?
Well, look him up. I mean, he was pretty rugged.
But I don't believe this felt guilty part. What I'm getting at is the Rhodes Scholarship Program a way of identifying extremely smart people, giving them money, and getting them aligned with your way of thinking, which might include going on to protect and be involved in global scams where you get Rhodes Scholars on the news, you get Rhodes Scholars in these various foundations, et cetera, and they're all on board. Maybe they go to meetings for alumni and stuff like that.
Let me answer the question. So this Rhodes Trust, in the United States, it used to be that the top 32 students who fill out applications, and it should have been scholars and athletes. You're not supposed to be just a scholar, you're supposed to be good in academics and good in sports originally. Are selected and they get a stipend, their full expenses paid to go through 2 years of graduate school at the college of their choice in Oxford. And of course, if you're picked to be a Rhodes Scholar, you can go to any one of the colleges you want to go to. So then in addition, there's a foundation that sort of like an alumni association for all of the, well, they don't get money, it's a way, and this guy here, Bob Harrison, is on the board of the U.S., I think, Rhodes Scholarship Foundation, whatever it's called. And they do, it's a network. They definitely do network, but they don't get massive money directly out of it. It's a big honor to get a Rhodes Scholar.
They've made your life, they've made your career. You're going to college, you're having...
Oh, no, this is after you've been to college. So you go to, Bill went to Georgetown, you compete against all the other kids everywhere, and once you graduate from Georgetown, this is for your first postgraduate degree.
Right.
So anyway, so the other thing that's important to look at here is this one thing where I say membership fees received. Okay? Note that they say no membership fees were received, yet in all the documents that we have out of WikiLeaks, they're talking about selling memberships, giving away memberships. Here at the IRS, to get their federal tax exemption, they say, no, we don't do that. We don't do that. Right? So, and we don't give any benefits to our members. We don't do that. The only member of this thing is supposedly the William J. Clinton Foundation. There are no memberships, even though all the literature says we have members and this and that. So then we go to the next page. Okay. In part 8, in the specific activities, they say, are you going to enter into any joint ventures, including partnerships or limited liability companies treated as partnerships in which you share profits and losses? Okay? And Harrison, the Rhodes Scholar, Clinton, says, no, we're not going to do that, even though that's exactly what they have been doing with Laureate. You know, Bill's being paid by Laureate. We're going to show you in a second how much, millions of dollars. And no, we don't do that. We don't do any of that, right? A bold-faced lie. Even though this supposed university started in March of 2008, so 2.5 years before this is filled out. Now, the Wall Street Journal and others, if you hit that second link, they have covered this for-profit chancellorship, but they haven't thought it through enough on all the places where they should have disclosed Bill's compensation, and if Hillary had any or Chelsea had any. This $17.6 million needs to go in the Clinton Foundation disclosures, it needs to go in the CHI disclosures, it needs to go in the Clinton Global Initiative disclosures. Any Clinton charity should be disclosing that Bill got a payment, around the side door here from Laureate. Laureate's a joint venture partner of the Clinton Foundation. Laureate's a donor in theory to the Clinton Foundation, and it's strictly forbidden that Bill would collect $17.6 million from this joint venture partner, which is probably why he didn't disclose any of this on any of the tax forms that still haven't been amended. So if we go back in, then you get to the question of international activities. You see, it says here, do you or will you operate in a foreign country or countries? But they say no. Then if you're going to do that, you got to name the foreign countries, the regions inside the countries where you're going to operate, your operation in each country and region inside the country, and then most importantly, describe how your operations in each country and region further your exempt purposes. Okay? And so they say, nah. Even though we're doing all this international stuff, no, we're not going to tell you. We can't tell you that. That would make it difficult for us to get federal tax exemption.
That's the Colonel's secret recipe.
Yeah, we can't do that. And that's a problem under U.S. law. I mean, this is basically a deceptive application where they got a benefit secured under false pretenses, and the Clintons profited personally in Bill's $17.6 million payment. But starting by 2001, the Clinton Foundation has been operating outside Little Rock. Remember I said they're not authorized to do that, all over the world, with a mixture of these for-profit and not-for-profit partners. You're not allowed to do that. And you're also, when you operate a charity in a foreign country, you got to check the laws in the foreign country. We're not going to do that. And then you look at this and you say, all right, what the hell is this Clinton Global Initiative supposed to do? I mean, and this is just laughable. The purposes are exclusively charitable and shall include engaging governmental, corporate, and nonprofit leaders, as well as college students and online participants, in the development of concrete and measurable commitments to action to address, not all of them, just some of the world's most pressing challenges. That's an absurd, it's like, this is the kind of stuff that might get you a B in a social studies paper.
Right.
At some third-ranked university. But this is an absurd statement. This is not charitable. You can't mix business development with corporations and nonprofit and government leaders. You can't have these meetings where you get all these people in a room. You wall it off to the outside, so it's not a public charity, which it has to be. You concoct all these business deals. You don't tell anybody about the business side, the benefits, but you just write these statements about your purposes, which we're going to show you. And I defy you to keep a straight face when we get into the section where we talk about what they claim they did at this Clinton Global Initiative University.
First 501c3 strip club.
Exactly. Well, pretty close.
Yeah.
So for the lawyers, and Stuart Dean is a good friend and a great lawyer, and some of our accountants who are watching this very closely, here is like the quick explanation of why this thing is deader than a doornail. Bruce Lindsley incorporated this thing on the 3rd of September 2009, filing the Articles of Incorporation with the Secretary of State on the 4th of September. And it says in this Article of Incorporation that you can't have fewer than 3 directors, and that the initial board of directors has to have 3 members, right? Mm-hmm. And that's, lawyers that are helping me, so I'm able to understand why this is obvious. Arkansas state law provides that. All this is saying is we're gonna comply with Arkansas state law, which means that when you set up this nonprofit corporation, at the moment when you set it up, it has to have 3 directors. Well, they didn't want to explain who those directors were. And unlike for New Chai, which should have filed what's called a short period tax return, and unlike the Clinton Foundation, which should have filed a short period tax return, this new Clinton Global Initiative filed a short period tax return for the period 4 September 2009 to 31 December 2009, and then also any intervening subsequent events. And at the very back of that file, which of course is excluded from the Clinton Foundation website, but which we find on ProPublica Explorer, it says, this is the initial return for this entity. The directors were not determined until 2010. Therefore, there were no directors to report for 2009. They're claiming they had no directors.
You can't do that.
No, this is the Clinton Global Initiative.
What does that say?
An assistive technology like a screen reader, just exit out. So, but the point here is, here they are to the IRS on a return that is not visible on the Clinton Foundation website, but is available to the persistent among us on ProPublica Nonprofit Explorer. Here they state, under penalties of perjury, in a tax return for Clinton Global Initiative, We didn't have any directors in 2009. Well, that means you weren't a corporation under Arkansas law, and you're dead. You can't undo that. You know, you're saying you didn't have them, then you didn't have them, which means you weren't at all times a validly organized corporation, which means you fail both the organizational test and the operational test for this entity, which means you're a dead duck, which explains probably why this form is not on their site. Because if you knew this, you'd say, well, this is an excerpt from a post that I did back on the 5th of September 2016 that you can read at your leisure. And it gives the skeptics among you who are going to say, wow, Charles doesn't know what he's talking about. No, I do know what I'm talking about here. And this thing, the Clinton Global Initiative, was dead on arrival September 4th, 2009. Right? Didn't pass any of the tests. None of the subsequent work is valid as a charity.
Illegal from the word go.
From the get-go. And then you take a step back. How is hosting this conference where you're concocting deals in fancy hotel rooms with hot and cold running who knows what, liquored up and having a good old time, how is that charity? It's not charity.
Well, I mean, I've been to charity events where they have dinners and cocktail parties and stuff.
Do they ever spend $8.5 million on the party?
Well, I don't.
No.
I don't think so.
It's a lot to spend.
That is
on
a
a
lot.
party.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be a serious party. $8.5 million.
I almost think it's how could you do that? That right there seems like they're laundering money from that. I mean, $8 million.
Yeah. So if we go into the next one, this is where it gets fun. All right. So the Clinton Global Initiative tax returns are actually on the Clinton Foundation website, but you have to look very hard to find them. This is a schedule that shows, for this university, Bill's back to school chancellorship, Grifter's got a Grift University, how much did the Clinton Global Initiative spend on all of its programs in 2010, 11, and 12? They spent $1.7 million in 10, $2.1 million in 11, $1.2 million in 2012 for a total of $5 million. Okay? On the side, through the side pocket arrangement, Bill is getting $2.25 million from Laureate, which he doesn't disclose, $2.5 in 2011 from Laureate, the $3.5 gets a total of $8.3 million, so 165% of what they spend on programs goes into Bill and Hillary's personal pockets.
It's crazy.
And that's just strictly forbidden. You can't do that. That is what's called, it's a private gain, okay? And if we go a little bit into smaller type, and this is one, where, I'm going to say something I probably shouldn't say and I'll get in trouble for it, but this is a moment in time for this page where I would encourage people who have not yet experimented with marijuana to go get some marijuana, get some brownies, and then see whether you could read this stuff with a straight face after, 5 minutes of smoking some pot. In 2010, they seriously claimed that one of the things they did with these students is they created a microfinance sewing project that will create reusable, washable, and environmentally friendly menstrual sanitary pads in the rural village of Lawala, Kenya. I mean, come on. That is absurd.
Why not just send them like Kotex or whatever?
But it's an absurd, I mean, the notion that you would even think that that's a good idea. And remember, they don't do any international work.
Isn't water a hard thing to come by in some of those places, like washing?
But remember they said in the thing, we're not going to do any international work. This is Kenya, as last I checked, is pretty international.
Yeah.
Right? And then the other...
Oh, no, it's the 51st state. Our previous president was born there.
Was 57th? And then painting rooftops white in New York City to reduce buildings' overall energy consumption. Now, maybe that's a thing.
I think that's a good idea, actually.
Could be a good idea, but as a guess, there's probably a large number of engineering construction firms already thinking about this.
Well, you also can't do it probably if you're not part of the union to just go paint stuff in New York City.
Right, but you're only spending $1.7 million on all your programs. So how many roofs were painted by this thing? This is laughably small.
Yeah.
They did not file with the Department of Education in New York to create this university, or in any of the cities where they did this. In 2011, they have this is hysterical, Practical Guides for Survival. Now, Practical Guides for Survival is in Haiti, right? The earthquake happened in 2010.
Run from the Clintons.
Right, exactly. And this is a new group that creates pamphlets on disaster preparedness in Haitian Creole and distributes them in Haiti. Remember, they don't do any international work, but this is Haiti. They're doing this stuff. I mean, after the earthquake, they're going to say, don't worry about cleaning up this previous earthquake. We've got this special pamphlet in Creole, so you can think about the next earthquake that's going to knock. It's just like
crazy, handing out preparedness stuff after the earthquake.
Right. And then you have, what could go wrong with this one? Oh yeah, here we go. Building with bottles in 2012. And you notice the size of the programs are getting smaller and smaller as time passes. A sustainable business in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, again, internationally, that trains, it should say, mobility impaired individuals to build functional furniture out of disposed plastic bottles and sell them for a profit.
Oh.
Now, like, how could that make any sense? Impaired people, probably meaning injured, disabled people, you tell them to go get these plastic bottles, and we're going to turn that into furniture, and you're going to make a profit on it in Haiti, a place that is international, where we're not authorized to do any of this work.
And not many people have money or the need to buy furniture made out of garbage.
Right, exactly. and they're writing this. So meanwhile, Bill's like, I'll let this thing out. We spent $5 million on that, but I pocketed 8 large.
That's crazy.
And nobody's looking at this. None of these do-gooders. None of these, Bernie Sanders. Well, maybe he wants to get in on this game, but Elizabeth Warren's not looking at this and saying, "Huh? It's ridiculous." And then this is verbiage down here. If we just move it up a little bit on the page. This is from the IRS. Any transaction between an organization and a private individual, that would be Bill, in which the individual appears to receive a disproportionate share of the benefits of the exchange relative to the charity served, presents an annulment issue. Okay? And compensation arrangements are an example of an annulment. When they look at this type of stuff, what they generally do, the IRS, is they say, how much do they spend on programs? $5 million. Okay? Not more than an insubstantial amount of cumulative private gain can be created through the operation of a charity, according to the regulations. That has been held to be $1,000 or less. Okay, right. Here it's 165% of the program expenses went into Bill's pocket because he's got bills to pay. This is just absurd, and it's even more absurd that people in the IRS haven't done anything about this. This, by the way, was all happening while Hillary is Secretary of State, giving favors to Laureate.
Yeah, I mean, for most people, if you earned $8 million in the course of your entire life, you could live on that, and that's crazy.
And we don't yet know whether this contract that Bill received was a 5-year deal that he knew about in 2010. So if he was...
Because then you have to announce, I have this deal moving forward for 5 years.
And each one of these things, you'd have to say, I'm getting 17.6 over, so the number would be even higher if you did this correctly. So, BKD at work again, notorious BAD.
Next page.
Yes, sir. All right, so why would Barack Obama have tolerated all this? Now, we're talking about the midterm elections here.
Looking at all those zeros, he's like,
So this is for the period that ended, the Congress that ended in December 31st, 2008, those 2 years. Bush was obviously president. Democrats and independents caucused together for 50 votes. Republicans had only 49. And so Democrats controlled the Senate and Democrats controlled the House, right? When Bush was president, and nothing happened. Right? It was very tough to get anything done in that time frame.
He was also an idiot, which contributed to that.
And then Obama won, and they controlled the White House, they controlled the Senate, 58 votes all in, and they controlled the House with a commanding majority. But they tried all sorts of stuff, including persecuting the Tea Party, ramming Obamacare down, and the reaction against that has been, ever since then, the Democrats have been going, steadily down in terms of the control they had in the Senate and the influence they had in the House. So if you're in a place where, this is where you try to do all the good stuff that he got done in his mind, but his power is ebbing, and you need money to get yourself reelected in 2012 and Democrats to fight Republicans, what better way of doing that than having this slush fund, the Clinton Global Initiative, where no one's checking anything. You got notorious BAD, blind, accountants who don't look at anything. They'll put whatever report you want out there. You got trustees who are in on the take. Doug Band is trying to make money off this thing. Bill's coining it. He's making money. He's happy. So this could be an explanation for why the Obama administration said, you know what? Not only will we let this happen, let's set this up so that, Hillary can become president after me, and I'll do that in my Obama Foundation. I mean,
Exactly.
now, is that going on right now?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Yes, he thinks he can, but he's going to find out he cannot get away with this.
During just the past week, I believe Michelle Obama reiterated that she's not going to run for president. I don't believe that.
Yeah, she's going to ask people. She'll want to be begged. To run for
Exactly.
president. Yeah.
Exactly.
So then, if we go to this next page,
Oh,
now we're going to go into this re-examining the timeline here. The whole idea that Hillary was exclusively using personal email, that surfaces on the 2nd of March 2015, right? Then we understand, this is from the IG report, the Horowitz report, that on the 4th of May 2015, some unnamed private attorney asked Comey to open a public corruption investigation into Hillary, right? So they finally, it takes them till the 10th of July to do it. And they do a half-assed job, basically. I think the decision was made there to go through the motions. We're not really going to get to the bottom of it. Hillary's going to be the president.
that lawyer should have claimed that they drank a beer and Hillary raped them.
Yeah.
Then they would have investigated right away.
And so we talked about this before, and you got a link to it. The senior State Department person walks into the Washington field office and says, this investigation is taking too long here. I'll tell you what's really going on here. This is an affront. You got to do something about it.
We still don't know who that is, right?
We have suspicion. I don't know the name off the top of my head, but somebody has told me a name. And so Comey, instead of doing anything about that, decides that this Andrew McCabe is going to become the deputy director of the FBI, the troublesome Andrew McCabe, and this loyal John Giacolone walks out the front door of the FBI. He had been a crucial person trying to do the right thing. Okay? It's in this moment, the 15th of February 2016, that Matthew Tate incorporates this Capital Alpha Security Limited in the UK. Now, can we go into Google?
Absolutely. And of course, let's reiterate that this Matthew Tate is a self-proclaimed former employee of GCHQ, one of these companies that I think you sort of never leave.
Yeah. So
British Government Communications Headquarters. Would you like me to Google what?
just if you can go to Google and put Companies House UK. Yeah, hit that one. And then find company information. And then hit start now. We're showing people how to do this. So
Yep.
in the UK, you can get information at Capital Alpha Security. Yeah, you can, no.
Oops. This is it.
You notice that was dissolved on the 24th of July, 2018. So we look at filing history.
That's very recently.
Right, but look at filing history. All
This
right,
is
and
the
then we
best.
look at the accounts. This thing was the size of this thing. I mean, this is an entity. Matthew Tate was the CEO of this entity. The only financial accounts that are filed for this are if you hit View PDF.
This one?
Yeah. This is a company so big, okay, if you go to the next page, look at that equity.
Well, it's pounds sterling, Charles, so this is actually about $1.40.
$1.35.
Sorry. He's doing quite well. I can see why he would
to
boast about his executive position here.
Now, it could be that Capital Alpha Security has operations outside the UK that we don't know about, but in his bio at Lawfare and in many articles, it always says CEO of Capital Alpha Security Limited, a UK firm. This is a nonsense firm.
I agree. And he's a nonsense guy. What is F6S?
Where do you see that?
Well, I just Googled Capital Alpha Security, and we get this. I mean, again, this doesn't, seem like a lot of details. I guess this is some sort of...
Actually, look at this for a second. So he's been at Project Zero May 15 to the president
Whoa!
that says unconfirmed. This may not be true.
Where does it say unconfirmed? Oh, this says.
Yeah.
So this is someone just gathering information
Yeah,
about
this may
it?
not be true.
F6S. Yeah, I don't know. I think that the document that you just brought up, which is obviously information provided by the British government, is quite interesting.
But if you go back into the slide, Jason, I'm mindful of the time here. They set this thing up right after McCabe becomes deputy director of the FBI, just before the messing around with Papadopoulos happens and Downer and all this kind of stuff. And query, what are Matthew Tate's true credentials, true expertise? Why is he allowed to say he's a security expert? I mean, you look me up and you'll say, yeah, the guy was managing director of Dillon Reed, and he's president of this, director here and that director. What has this guy ever actually done to get the credential that he's a cybersecurity expert, allowing him to be quoted the way he's quoted? Then by the 31st of July, the FBI opens this formal investigation into Carter Page. 21st October, the FISA court issues the warrant to spy, and this timeline from the Washington Post is actually way too long, but if people want to look at it, it's very good. And then this is an email that I got at 3:49 p.m., I believe, on the 19th of December 2016, okay? This is from Peter Smith, and I just lifted it, the text, the relevant text. I can confirm to if somebody...
I've seen it.
Yeah, but I'm saying to some government investigator wants to confirm that it's
Yeah.
easy to do. So here he says he formed KLS Research LLC in August 2016. The Delaware records suggest that it came together in September of 2016. And very typically what will happen is somebody will sign formation documents, as Bruce Lindsay did on September 3rd, 2009 for Clinton Global Initiative, but not file them with the Secretary of State till a later date. So that's not totally inconsistent. But he said, we came across multiple individuals who had possession of the 33,000 missing Clinton emails. None of these groups were tied to Russia as a nation state. This came to me on the 19th of December, 2016.
It's also worth mentioning that Shane Harris was unaware of this email when he wrote his article in the Wall Street Journal,
Right.
claiming that Peter Smith was in communication with Russian state hackers and he was purchasing the emails.
Right. So if we go to the next page, and we will be fleshing this out even more, but we don't want to go on forever, broadcast. There's a very suspicious transaction that occurs on the 7th of March 2017. The biggest piece of the Clinton Foundation, the Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation, was its right to control CHI, Clinton Health Access Initiative. But on the 7th of March 2017, for some strange reason, the Clinton Foundation says, you know what? We don't want that anymore. You guys can control it. We don't need to control it. This has been by far and away the biggest piece, it and predecessor organizations, the biggest piece of the Clinton Foundation since 2007. It was a magnet for government grants. It too, I believe, was poorly monitored. It had trustees who were not doing their job, accounting firms who were not doing their job, lawyers who were probably in on the take for professional fees. But for some strange reason, they give this up, the Clinton Foundation, and they don't. Cohn-Resnick, who was doing the audit for 2016, keeps CHI in the financial results for 2016, when what they should have done is they should have said, you know what, after the end of the year, we decided to surrender control, so it's not fair to look at, we should present it on two bases. We should present it as part of the Clinton Foundation and also as excluded, because it'll be excluded going forward, so that you can look at the trend. And they didn't do it that way. Then on the 17th of March, our friend Judge Knapp claimed that GCHQ worked with the Obama administration to spy on Trump, and that caused a furor. He did it, I think, in the morning, early afternoon.
He got relieved from his position at Fox.
Temporarily, for about however many days that is. And then he was back on 10:46 in the morning. On the 29th, he says, Judge Andrew Napolitano stands by his British surveillance report and returned to Fox News. So in other words, GCHQ likely was collaborating, colluding with elements of the Obama administration, we don't know yet which parts of the security services, we don't know which parts of the Democratic Party, we don't know which parts of the Hillary Clinton campaign, but it's a reasonable surmise
Yeah.
that the establishment in the UK was terrified that Donald Trump would succeed in Brexit, succeed in dismantling the globalist things, and really didn't want to see any of that happen because that meant the consulting contracts, the side payments, all that stuff was out the window for the globalist swamp creatures.
Do you think it's possible, Charles, that the British Crown is the seat of this globalist empire?
Could be, could well be.
So they wouldn't want someone like Donald Trump coming and disrupting
Right.
their military and sort of surveillance control of the world, which is the United States and
Right.
all the surrounding agencies and the Five Eyes and all that.
Yeah, so someone will introduce to the show in time refers to the Anglo-Dutch alliance, that there is.
Yes, the Bilderbergs.
Yeah. So on May 4th, 2017, I get an email dated 4:58 p.m. In a call to Shane Harris, I mentioned your excellent misspelled work. And I only bring that up because he generally was pretty good, Peter, about typos and careful. And told them we felt some of the 33,000 missing Clinton emails related to the foundation, and hence we are after them. He said he was going to look you up. Now notice, he says here, I was off the record with him.
Yeah.
As I said, we are still searching and hope to find the 33,000. This is May 4th, 2017.
Yes.
Well after December 19th, 2016. We're still searching for them.
Yeah.
So
Where'd that number 33,000 come from? Who first decided it was 33,000 missing?
I think it's Team Clinton.
Exactly.
Yeah. So on the 13th of May, I had this late afternoon update call. It's a Saturday with Peter Smith. We've talked about it on prior shows.
Sorry, before we leave May 4th, it's also important to reiterate to the audience that this is Peter saying
Right.
he was off the record in his first communication with Shane Harris, which after Peter's death, only a few weeks later, Shane describes that as an interview with him
Right.
and mischaracterizes particularly what was said.
Right. Exactly. And also it's worth mentioning that Shane Harris began his career at the Wall Street Journal early in May.
And left before December 2017.
Right, in December 2017.
In December, right, before the end of December, I meant. And so he went from the Daily Beast to the Wall Street Journal to the Washington Post.
Right.
That doesn't seem very CIA.
Right. And so here you have, I have this conversation with Peter less than half an hour. We go over different ideas that I had for him, he had for me, catching up, as we did. We would talk periodically, regularly. And one of the projects I've said before was that I suggested that Peter go, given his Chicago contacts with Democrats, which he had, at a high level, he knew two directors or trustees of the Obama Foundation. I suggested that Peter pay a visit to each of them and say, listen, you're taking this Obama Foundation down the wrong road. It's not going to be good for you because we are going to make an issue of the Clinton Foundation, and it's going to get, justice will come to the Clinton Foundation, and once people see how badly wrong the Clinton Foundation has been running, they're going to turn their attention to other presidential foundations. Right. So please don't do this. And he was really excited about doing that because
Peter was.
Peter, yeah, because he has been involved in Troopergate and things like that. And here was a chance to try to really objectively help the Obamas and say, look, before you get hundreds of millions into this crooked foundation that's not a foundation, where you're going to have to pay a gigantic tax to unwind that, just take your lumps for the first 12 or 13, start over, do it correctly, and raise the billion. But don't do it in a flawed structure the way the Clintons have done it, because you can never fix the flaw.
What was Peter's take on Barack Obama? He loved the Chicago Cubs, according to that Walmart video.
Did he? He did not he was not a fan of Barack Obama.
I wonder if he was a cap wearer, that he would wear a Chicago Cubs
I never met him in
cap.
person, so I don't know.
I'd be curious to know. I want to speak to somebody who knew him. It just seems so conspicuous that he's wearing a Chicago Cubs hat in the video that's trying to convince him that that's him buying only one can of helium.
So here we go. This is now Peter dies, and I get word on the 16th of that. And I'm told initially that it's just, by a close friend, a mutual friend, that it was just a health issue. And I thought nothing of it until reports started surfacing, wait a minute, he didn't necessarily die of natural causes. So I met you in this time frame in June, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And by the 30th of June, 2017, I get this email from Shane at 4:35 p.m. saying, "We received a document today that Peter provided to one of our sources." Okay? We know from the Matt Tate Lawfare blog that the person who got this document was Matt Tate, right?
Yep.
And this says, "We received a document today." Now, we don't know at what time they received that document, but they had a story up at 12:30 a.m.
Who is that? A Lawfare blog?
No, the Wall Street Journal. Shane Harris had a story up.
It's also June 30th. It appeared on Lawfare blog.
Right, exactly. So, as I said before, neither the Washington Post, senior people at the Washington Post, nor the Wall Street Journal has said that they have a copy. Maybe they have one and they just don't want to say they have it, but neither of them have said, in fact, the opposite, both of them have said they do not have a copy of this memo. So the only person who may have seen this memo or had it characterized to anyone is Shane Harris and this Matt Tate guy.
We've also had the experience where people at the Wall Street Journal believe what Shane Harris says simply due to the fact that he was writing for the Wall Street Journal.
And if we go into that Lawfare, if you just Google Matt Tate and Lawfare, oh, there you go. And you look at the blog where it talks about how
The time I got recruited to collude with the Russians.
If we can pull that one up on this screen so I can see it.
Sure.
Okay, we got, This is at 10:50 p.m. He's writing this. Yeah, the time I got recruited to collude with the Russians. So we go down this page, and it says, keep going, it refers to the title.
It says give him money.
Yeah.
To lie.
Where is this title?
I can just search for it.
It's coming up. It'll be here in a second. Here we go. Clinton might have been intercepted. Dark web. Come on. Where are you? It's a pedagogical. Yeah, here we go. The document that supposedly was written by Smith is a demonstrative pedagogical summary developed and released prior to November 8th, 2016. Now, that is not the way Peter Smith wrote, based on, many emails that I have from him. He did not. He would not have written. And this is not the way anybody trying to raise money would title a document to raise money. I mean, this is a kind of thing that a young kid, a British scholar, might think is, why don't we invent some document that makes it seem as if Peter Smith was on a path to release this thing prior to the election, and in so doing collude possibly with Russians to affect the election. Now, when was this document actually written? I mean, no one has been able to vet it yet. Now, maybe Peter did write it. That's always a possibility. But we're in a zone here, like the Steele dossier. This isn't the first trick where people are claiming that this document is gospel truth, but you can't check it, and we can't tell you who paid for it, and we can't tell you how much it really cost, and we can't tell you when it was really released or what its chain of provenance was. Can't do any of that.
Have we seen information about KLS Research?
No, I haven't.
Do we know if it is in fact a Delaware LLC?
It is, yeah, it is.
But who filed for it?
I'm not sure, but that was created. But this, I can just say from my experience trying to raise money years ago, and I'm not in that business anymore, but you don't, if you're going to send a puff piece around, a marketing piece,
you don't use a lot of complicated words.
It's very simple. In fact, the very rich people, they don't even necessarily want the document. It's like, what are you up to?
Yeah.
Why should I do this? What's the payoff? What's the downside? How much do you want?
Elevator pitch.
Yeah, but again, you don't write something pedagogical, whatever, demonstrative, blah, blah, blah. You just don't, that's not real.
British pomposity.
It could be. So I think the mainstream press, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, CNN, owe us some real work here. Especially re-examining, who exactly is this Matt Tate?
And Shane Harris as well.
Yeah. So the balance of this is just an appendix for the doubters. We'll just quickly fly through it. Remember I said, this is an interesting one, you're going to like these numbers. I told you that the Clinton Global Initiative did indeed have predecessor activities. In fact, Bill announced that he was going to create it on the 21st of January 2004.
Predatory what?
Predecessor.
Sorry.
21 January 2004 in Switzerland, okay? Remember, Clinton Foundation has no international activities, but here's Bill in Switzerland announcing this thing. And then they have this puff piece about what the Washington Post says they're doing, and I'm the numbers guy. And here's this marketing thing which alleges in the first meeting, note these numbers, that you look at them, the numbers of commitments to action. Now, what's a commitment to action? When you raise money for a university, right, you're looking for a cash payment or securities payment for operating expenses. You're looking cash for securities, for endowment. You can enter into an agreement to have a binding pledge where you say, subject to the passage of time or subject to this condition or that condition, I will irrevocably give you 5 million, 2 million, 4, whatever the number is, 10,000. But a commitment to action is a nothing burger. It's it's like
an MOU.
It's worse than an MOU. It has no legal force and effect whatsoever.
It even says that in it, right? No legal force and effect.
And the numbers here, they say, well, we got together in this meeting, we got first meeting in September 2005, Bill had his heart attack earlier on, there's some sympathy. And so we raised $2 billion in commitments to action. Now, and the numbers here are divided by poverty, climate change, religion, governance, other. And then you look at, the accountants will know what I'm talking about here. You look at those numbers, you add them up, and you say, wait a minute. The likelihood that the commitments actually added up to $2,001,000 is remote, right? And then you look at the percentages and you say, okay, why don't we say 40% related to poverty, a third to climate change, a sixth to religion, a tenth to governance, enterprise, and investment, which is not charity, and 1% to other. These numbers are invented, in my opinion. And saying that you're going to commit money to alleviate poverty, I mean, it's like saying, I'm going to alleviate poverty by hiring you, Jason, to do 10 films. You can't, it's not necessarily the case that alleviating poverty is charitable, right? It could be that this is really a scheme to just employ your friends. Climate change, neither the Clinton Global Initiative nor the Clinton Foundation has any right to do that. The Clinton Foundation explicitly is barred from doing religious stuff. It's definitely not one of the things they can do.
Barack Obama wants to do that too.
His illegally organized foundation says he can do it. But this governance, enterprise, and investment, that is not charity. And so what were these $197, $198 million worth of commitments to action in 2005? This is just rubbish.
Charles, Agent 99 is in the comments telling me that Glenn Simpson used to work at the Wall Street Journal.
He did.
What did he do there?
Just a reporter.
Wow. And now he's in opposition research. I wonder if Matt Tate and Shane Harris aren't behaving similarly.
It seems like it.
It does.
So if we keep going to the next page, we'll just remember in August 9th, 2010, the Rhodes Scholar Bob Harrison signs a document saying there are no predecessor activities of the Clinton Global Initiative. Here is a long press release. It talks about, this time not $2 billion, they raised $7.3 billion in 2006.
Damn.
Right, and then you can go and read the press release. It's very interesting. It's all wrong. But for the very funny thing about this, we can play at another moment. We're running out of time here, but or we're over time. We can test out Ortell's first law and the names, of these people who were alleged to be big donors at Clinton Global Initiative meetings. I think in 6, one of them was that guy Raphael Folieri, I believe either 6 or 7.
Oh, the boyfriend of Anne Hathaway, who was getting on the boat with John McCain, who got arrested for real estate fraud?
Yeah, just straight up fraud, yeah. He was honored by Bill Clinton.
Wow.
Yeah. If you go to the next page, so same idea for 2007. Here they go, instead of talking about money, they say we're going to improve more than 200 million lives in over 100 countries. But remember, the Clinton Global Initiative doesn't do any international work, right? And the Clinton Foundation is not allowed to do any international work. So, it's just snakes on a plane, words on a page. I mean, it's just garbage. And they keep doing it in 2008. They talk about this meeting, the first meeting of Clinton Global Initiative University, is held in New Orleans, in Tulane University, New Orleans.
Don't trust them either.
Yeah, and then in 2008, again, they talk more about this international stuff in Bolivia and other places. Again, not a lot to do any international work. Next page. Remember, this is the year before they sign an application with the IRS saying they're not a successor operation. The preceding year, the marketing says they did all this stuff here. So, I mean, it's just, all we did here is look at a portion, a small piece of this supposed charity. And for the life of me, I do not understand at this moment. I'm happy to keep going over this different ways and other ways. We're heading towards this target date of November 15th, 2018, where we'll have a new IRS chief in place. We'll have maybe some reshuffling of the Justice Department by then. Shortly after then, the Clintons make the mistake of filing another set of false and materially misleading tax returns that's just going to compound their financial and criminal penalties in the end. Or maybe the thing comes crashing down sooner than that.
Is that the final page?
That is the final page, Jason.
Well, it's quite a presentation today, Charles. I've been biting my tongue with this Matt Tate, Shane Harris information. We've actually found quite a bit more about these individuals, but I'm satisfied that these guys are making up a story about Peter Smith, and I would suspect they may know more about the circumstances surrounding his death than they've revealed to us. And I think that they've been colluding with one another, and James Comey and Ben Wittes, to put out false stories, because the timing of when we've put out stories about Peter Smith, which have involved things like going to the locations where he was, observing evidence or whatever, there have been people who have come forward to tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about, that I'm stating conspiracy theories and opinions formulated in the absence of evidence. But the police sergeant who was party to the investigation of the death said on the phone that we've got more evidence in this matter than they do, and that they stopped investigating because they're a very small town police department with limited resources, and that the FBI had taken over the investigation. So I think we see yet another example of cover-up, collusion, the press being controlled through a variety of mechanisms that may include a decades-long system whereby people are indoctrinated at a young age in college or whatever when they're easily influenced. And it causes me to think about some of these other young people who've gone to the London School of Economics, and we know there's all these fraternities within these universities and secret societies. These are perfect environments in which to identify and weed out anyone but the people who are like-minded, who are willing to do what it takes to get ahead, and then from a very young age, they're involved in something that they can't really roll over on without implicating themselves. And as they get baby-stepped into these positions of greater financial security and power and influence,
you know, it's a mess. It's a swamp.
It's a swamp, and it's got to be drained, Charles. So I want to thank you again for another fantastic presentation. I do want to remind everyone that when you see a comment on a public YouTube video that is complaining about Crowdsource the Truth, recommending that people become sponsors by going to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, that's very likely someone who's trying to sabotage this effort, because you should just tell those people to go over to CNN and tell them to take all the ads off of their programming and do it all for free. Because if they really wanted the news and information to get out to everyone, they should be doing that for free. But they won't do that. So consequently, for us to keep doing this, to keep getting to the real news, the thing that we haven't actually explicitly said that's so important about Peter Smith, that's happening right now at a fever pitch, is that all of these parties that we're talking about, and others, are cooperating to try to pin this Russian collusion story on Peter Smith, and since he's dead, he can't defend himself. They're utilizing lawfare, the technique of lawfare, not just the blog. They've named their blog after the tactics that they use. They're utilizing lawfare against General Michael Flynn. Because you see, we've been wondering for so long, why are they delaying the sentencing of General Flynn? It doesn't seem to make any sense. But what it does is it effectively gags the general from confirming or denying this business relationship, which I am feeling very confident did not exist. I don't trust the statements of his lawyer. But by having him under so much legal jeopardy, General Flynn's not going to speak about this. And in the media now, they've presented this Peter Smith evidence as a smoking gun of Russian collusion. And if they can use the news to convince the public and to convince the members of Congress, and if they win the House, they're setting the stage. They're laying out all this fake information so that when their fake play gets played out in public, it will seem like it's got a firm foundation, but it doesn't. So I think this is one of the most important shows we've done, Charles, because we've got to get the word out that all these things that the Wall Street Journal and MSNBC and the Washington Post have been saying about Peter Smith are contradicted by the evidence provided by Peter Smith.
Yeah. Well, thanks for letting me do yet another show, and thanks to the viewers for your patience in watching this and your support. I hope you do go out and try to watch this Gosnell film and sign up to subscribe if you haven't already done that, and of course support Jason on Patreon.
Thank you very much, Charles. I'll see you on Wednesday for Closing In. I'll be back tomorrow only on Patreon with a very special episode of Light on Conspiracies with Ole Damagard. Ole's website has been nuked, taken out, and he details the very troubling circumstances surrounding that. So see everybody tomorrow at 11 a.m.